Hello, welcome to the July 7th, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field or simply send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, and I'm going to mute my monitoring source here, sorry about that. So when asking questions, if you could specify which level of Cubase that you're running, so if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, which version number, such as 10.5, 11, or 12, and also which operating system, that information is helpful. When asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in kind of a real-time manner will soon be eclipsed by the number of questions coming in. So if we could refrain from asking the same questions repeatedly, that would only kind of slow down the process and would take us longer to get through the questions. We'll try to go through each of the questions chronologically. And we should have all of the topics that are discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field with timestamps so you can quickly navigate to particular topics. If you wanted to navigate for topics that have been covered in the over 3 years of live streams that we've been doing since we ramped it up during COVID, you could go to cubaseindex.com. And Jan from Stockholm has been incredibly kind and generous enough to create that website, so we want to give special thanks to him. We also want to, if you're looking for another area for that's a wonderful resource of information for the Cubase community, you can check out the Cubase Nation Discord, and Jazz Dude has done a lot of work compiling that and making it just a great fountain of information. So kudos to Jazz Dude for that. And we have two people that serve as moderators. So we want to give special thanks again to Jazz Dude and to Agent K. They're not Steinberg employees. They just really do this out of the kindness of their heart to make it a better community. So once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the U.S. distributor of Steinberg products. And I'm the host of the live stream. I'm presenting from just outside Washington, D.C. area in Alexandria, Virginia in the United States. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see people throughout the whole world kind of logging on. So with that, we'll go ahead and start with questions. Okay, this I believe is from Ace Amadeus. He asked, "Hi Greg, hope you're doing well. What is the best way to swap drum sounds from a sound and loop set? On some of the loops, I just want to change the snare drum or toms to my own custom sounds. Thanks." All right, so let's say we have just a drum loop here. And I wanted to replace, let's say, this snare drum in this. So I'm going to just open up an instance of Groove Agent. So we'll do Groove Agent SE that comes with the program. So we'll add this as an instrument. I'm going to drag the loop to an instrument pad. Let's go to our slice, and we're going to just come over here and create slices. So from the Edit tab on Instruments. So now each slice has automatically been mapped to a particular key, and it's created a pattern pad. So if I wanted to play this, it would play back the rhythmically the same exact pattern. But if we wanted to replace, let's say, the snare, I'll just come over here. Let's look for snare drums. Okay. All right, so let's say I want to replace this snare. All I'd have to do is just kind of drag it over. And all I'd have to do if I wanted to just replace that particular sound, so where I have the snare hits here, so as we would play back the pattern, So now that I've created that, what we're able to do is I could just drag this particular loop out. So I'll solo my groove agent track. I'll go to the pattern, and as we drag this out, we can now see the particular pattern that's been created. And it's just going to kind of create it chromatically. And I'll take it off loop. So that's how you could just kind of take the drum loop, drop it into Groove Agent, and then slice it, and then from the instrument pad, you can just replace. You could layer, or if you wanted to just replace just by dragging the sample right onto the pad. All right, just jump over that. That was one of the questions that kind of scrolled away. All right, so we have a question from Uno Memento from Finland. Says, I generated harmony voices. I want to change the pitch of some of the individual sounds with Very Audio, but Cubase won't let me do that. I could drag the sound with the mouse, but it goes back. Any ideas? So it's probably that particular sound is created, is being locked to the particular chord track. So I will just, let me just find a quick example here, and we'll show you how to fix that for you. All right, let me just open up a project, seeing if it was in my recent projects list. Okay, so I'm going to just create a chord track from the piano. So I'm going to select this particular track. We'll go to project. We could just drag it to the chords, but I'm just going to go to chord track, and we'll say create chord events from the MIDI. And now when we want to create a harmony, so if I want to just select that particular range, let's go to our audio menu to generate harmony voices. So we'll add 2 harmony voices. All right, so now I will just switch. I'll just adjust my volume down. But when I go into a Very Audio editor for this particular event, and I go to move, that we'll see that as we move it, that it's just kind of jumps straight back. So what we need to do is on the track, we're going to select the track, go to chords, and we'll say under follow chord track, we'll say off. And now I could just come over here and now it's not going to snap back. So we could just kind of even just create own different harmonies like that and experiment. So once again, just select the track of the harmony that's been generated, and under follow, go to the chords tab, and under follow chord track, choose off, and then that should work for you. All right, and Uno Memento is checking in from Finland. We have Patrick says, hi Greg, just wondering if you have received my email I sent after the most recent live stream. Yeah, so I got the email. I'll get a chance, I'll respond kind of in full, but I think that there's a lot of complexities with having, and this is our discussion from the last live stream of having kind of sub projects and, being able to delete a file in one project and not have that affect other projects, which is can be very tricky, but yeah, and I did pass it on to Steinberg. So, all right, so we see from Jay Allen just saying hi. So thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have Triya Mar from India. Says, hello, from second question regarding the live broadcasting situation. Why can't we have low latency plugins by Steinberg? I want to use them, but too much latency. So a lot of the plugins, a lot of the plugins you could actually just determine, the latency as you go into, let's come over to the, the ones that have a lot of latency are going to be like the multiband compressor is one that's going to have a lot of latency. And when utilizing that, so let's go to our studio, to our VST plugin manager, and let's say we go to effects. So, some of the plugins, like, okay, let's go to our frequency, just randomly select, let's say, our envelope shaper plugin, that you could actually see the latency on a lot of the plugins. So say flanger, 0, FX modulator could be higher. So, certain plugins that have look ahead functionality, but let's say, okay, I want it to come over to, so we can see like the multi-band compressor is going to have a lot of latency. So some plugins, by their nature of, if you're, having to take a particular, type of process, it could take more. But let's say if we go to the limiter, that's 88 samples, gate, FX module. So you could see that there's a number, let's say, let's come over to like our studio EQ. So if I come over here, studio EQ is 0 seconds. Let's go to VST bass amp, VST amp rack. These are all 0 milliseconds for processing. So depending upon, let's say we go to the studio EQ, there's no latency at all with that particular effect. So some plugins will incur more latency, but if we wanted to, let's say if we had a multi-band compressor to kind of get over this, we could go to inserts, and let's say if we have our dynamics plugins here. So let's say if we go to our multi-band compressor and we activate that on a particular channel, that to get around particular latencies, that you could put it into kind of a look ahead or live mode. So a lot of the plugins that could be more problematic for latency, you could just come over here and put it into live mode, and that will minimize the latency. But you can actually see which plugins take a lot of processing power just directly here. And realize that as you combine multiple plugins, that those latencies will get added up, and it's just how digital audio workstations work. But just using, let's say, our VST plugin manager, let's say, okay, I want to go to my compressor is 96 samples. So there's a number of different plugins that don't impose latency at all. All right, so we see Johnny Ray's just checking in from the Bay Area in US, I assume. All right, Best Green Jesus is ready for Friday questions. That's good. All right, and we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. We're glad he can make it, Best Green Jesus. And we have Filter Freak just saying Yabba Dabba Friday do. So he's apparently happy it's Friday. And we see Jan from CubaseIndex.com. Okay, so we see a question from Dallas LaRue. How does the wet-dry setting on a plugin affect the track on direct offline processing? So when like let's say if I wanted to take this particular vocal here. So let's say I go to, I'll turn off my reverb send. So now, so let's say I wanted to take just a portion of this file, and we'll go hit F7 to open up our direct offline processing. And let's say we wanted to just go to a particular, let's go to our reverb plugin, for instance. All right, so when we come over here, let's say we'll do a reverence. All right, so, and as we listen to this particular file now, we could just, so let me just apply that. I'll just do just this section. All right, so I'll just hit auto apply, and then we'll drop our reverence in. So as we do this, we may have too much reverb. So when we're doing this, we're processing the whole file, and we're not blending the original signal in. So this is where the, the mix could come into play. So if we just come over here, I could say, let's adjust the mix to 50%. But now when we listen to it, we can hear. So we'll come right over here. So with the wet-dry ratio, it allows you to balance the original signal versus the affected signal. And a lot of times we get this with, and we could also do this with, like if we wanted to do almost like a parallel processing where we're going to process, part of, we want like to blend a like compressed file with a non-compressed file without having to set up a parallel bus. That's when we could just use the mix settings on the plugins within the direct offline processing. Okay, another question, should direct offline processing be made permanent before export? So there's really no need to. So all the offline processing will just simply be included within the exported file. So there's no reason to make it permanent unless you wanted to for some reason, but there's no requirement. I would think that most people would choose not to always have the flexibility to undo something afterwards. All right, so we have a question from Filter Freak. It says, hi Greg, ever since the control room has been Cubase, I've always set my interface volume at Unity, and a control room it's a minus 25 dB, but I've noticed most people set their control room to 0 dB. So it really depends on, a lot of people would aim for 0 dB on a control room, but I think, why you may have like it set to minus 25 dB could be that your speakers, probably if you turn the gain down on your speakers, that's why you may have to drop it down 25 dB because maybe the gain structure of the, your monitoring system, whether it's powered speakers or the amplifier going to the speakers, might be kind of boosting it. So usually I have my audio interface set at Unity and my control room set, usually around 0 dB, maybe minus 6-ish. But it really depends on like what your monitoring source is set up and how that's reacting to it. So maybe if you adjust the gain down on your monitoring source, that would, you could do 0 dB or run kind of Unity on both your hardware and within the control room. So always wonderful to see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. Glad you can make it today. All right, we see Jan from Cubase Index, and always wonderful to see Jazz Dude on. Appreciate everything he does. All right, we have Alexander Plasco saying hi. We see Agent K on as well. All right, so Val Yu is on from Vienna. Just wishes everybody, saying hey to everybody, and wishes everyone a wonderful weekend. All right, and we have Jovanovic 3D checking in from Slovenia, and Enchanter sending greetings from Sri Lanka. Thanks for joining us. Probably in the middle of the night there. Glad you could join us. Thanks for being on the live stream. All right, so we have a question from Yossi Off. Yossi from London, UK. My Cubase 12 with UR44 is swimming in unwanted reverb. No idea where it's coming from. Any idea? Many thanks. So probably with your UR44, if you go to Studio, and you may see just like a Studio setup, or if you go more options, you may see, you'll see just like a little, and the UR44 is different in my interface, but you may see like an audio hardware setup. So go to open that up from your Studio menu or your device menu, depending which version you're on. So you'll see like audio device hardware or something along those lines. And once you open up that panel, you'll see two kind of like rotary encoders. One of them would be reverb. Just simply adjust it's probably going to be you'll see two encoders side by side, and I think it's the encoder on the right hand side. Adjust that down, and then that will negate the reverb being sent out from the hardware DSP on the unit itself. All right, and we see Jazz Dude just posting a link to an Arturia promotion. You could purchase Arturia products from the Steinberg website. All right, always wonderful to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. I hope your air quality has improved recently. Always great to see you on, John. Thanks for being here this afternoon. All right, so Value asked a question. Hey, Greg, question. Is there a way to create a macro/shortcut to insert a certain plugin on, let's say, slot 1 of a channel? And he's sending best greets from a sweaty, hot Vienna. So I don't know of a way to have it automatically insert a specific plugin. I know it's been asked before, and I've kind of, sent the request myself into Steinberg. But I currently don't know of a way to have that automatically have that work. All right, so we see from Jovanovic 3D, he asks, question, is there a way to make the Cubase tuner recognize voice pitch in real time? Let's give it a shot. So I'll just come here to the inserts. So, so you could do that. Now, if you wanted it to be on input, where you like as you're recording, the one thing that you want to do is to make sure that when you go to the studio, go to your studio setup and select your audio and select the audio system here. So select your audio interface, and then what you want to do is to make sure that direct monitoring isn't checked. So if it's in direct monitoring, what's going to happen is the signal goes straight from the input, the audio hardware input, straight to the audio hardware output, so that there's no incurred latency from plugins. So if you are trying to do it in real time, like while you're recording, but as you can see that as we play, smile, you think that you could just have that automatically. I can't forget when we first met. What a song. If you want to be more of a strobe tuner. So yeah, you can do it in real time. But if you're not seeing it like as you're tracking or recording, and that could be just that you have direct monitoring enabled and it's bypassing the software audio engine for monitoring. All right, always wonderful to see Razel from Denmark. All right, and Michael Pierce is checking in from a weirdly sunny and hot United Kingdom. So. Great to see you on, Michael. All right, so we have Tony ST just says, hi, Greg, I have a question about the trimming tool. Is it possible to set it in such a way that it is aligned to the grid? So let's say if I have, like right now I have this particular phrase here. So I'm going to just enable snap. So now as I come, it's just aligned directly to the grid. If I wanted to cut, I could only cut based on the grid. So let me know if that's what you wanted to do. So as we just, just come right over here, we can just simply nudge, we could trim and have it automatically snap to the grid just like that. So, or if you wanted to split, now I can't cut between the bars because my grid is set to bar. And then if I set this to beat, now I could only cut on the beat. Or we could choose to use the quantize. But once we have that, and if you want it to, so let's say I'll turn my snap off, and that's the letter J. Then I think if we open up our nudge palette, let's see if, all right, so now as I come over here to nudge, we could just say, we could, nudge the events based, or we could nudge the start and have that nudge directly to the grid, or if we wanted to nudge the ending of the file, we could have that nudge directly to the grid like so. So let me know if that makes sense, if that kind of helped. So it looks like you can just kind of nudge to the grid once snap is turned on. All right, wonderful to see Peter on from Montreal. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we see Uno Momento just says, thanks, Greg, perfect. That was probably to the very audio question. All right, Aldo Remy is checking in from Versailles, France. Thanks for joining us from France today. Great to have you on the live stream. All right, so we see from John Costigan says, hi, Greg. I have repeated the same mistake of downloading items I haven't purchased. What is the best practice to remove Hallian 7 and its enormous content? So I would just go to the Steinberg Library Manager, which is a utility that's installed on your system. Come over to like your Hallian content, and let's say, okay, I needed to remove a particular instrument, and then just click on remove here. So if it's not authorized, or you kind of downloaded it and and you don't have a license to run it, just click on remove from the Steinberg Library Manager utility. All right, so we have a question from VQT Piano. Hello from California. How to export and organize multi-files to someone for mixing, and how to import multi-file and organize audio files into your Cubase mixing template. Okay, so let's say I have, I'll just revert this particular file. or I'll just go to a different one. It's a little easier to. Okay, so if I wanted to take, first thing I want to do is set my left and right locators, kind of encompassing the project. So let's say we have, multiple edits here, and we want to actually just take this and pass it on to mixing to someone else. So really all we would have to do is come over and say, okay, we're going to go to our export audio mixdown. So once again, file menu to export audio mixdown. We could click on multiple. So we say, okay, I want to include my virtual instruments. I wanted to have, if you had effects channels, all of my audio channels here. And at this point, we could choose our, let's say our sample rate, bit depth, if we want them to be exported as interleave files, what processing we wanted to. So if we wanted like our mono files to be passed over as mono, if we wanted to include the insert effects and channel strip, or if you wanted to include the groups and send processing or the master effects processing on each of the files, we could just come right over here. So I'm just going to choose disabled, and after export, I'm going to just say, let's create a new project. So at this point, we'll just say, let's export the audio. So it's going to go through each of our files. I may have just set it to real time. Hang on. I'm going to uncheck real time export. And we can see now that this is created just and we could choose our file location. So this way, anyone using any particular, multi-track audio program could import all these at the same time. Now, if I wanted to take this particular project and import it, let's say into my template, I would go to, and kind of the second half of the question is and how to import the multi-file and organize audio files into your Cubase mixing template. So once you have this particular project and a project is saved, so let's say this is your mixing template, you would just go to import tracks from project. You could select a particular project. So I'm going to say, okay, let's go to, so I want this project, and we could select all the files, and we could choose select matching. So if it is the same name, so we see kick with named KIK. So if it has the same name in your template, that would automatically get mapped to that particular file if you select matching. You could also have it import directly into a new track, or you could just pick a particular track that you want this to go to be imported to within your template. So to import it back into your template, I'll just cancel this. All you have to do is open your template and go to import tracks from project, select a project, and you could choose to make sure you have the events checked if you wanted the channel and inspector settings. And let's say you didn't want automation because you're mixing it because maybe that's why you're getting the files to mix. At that point, you could just take that and import that directly into your existing template. Okay, Michael Pierce wants everyone to slap that like button carefully. So, and if you do learn a new tip or trick, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Try not to be too pushy on that. All right, always wonderful to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. All right, VQT Piano asks, how do I identify the chords from audio files, please? Okay, so close this out. So you have to open a chord track to start with, in like an empty chord track. And what we're going to do at this point is just say, okay, I want to take this guitar part, and it could be a whole mix or just a guitar. So one way to do it is just to drag it to an empty chord track, and it will do an analysis and automatically lay out the chord progression for you just that easily. Another method of doing the same thing is to go select the audio event, and it could be a full mix, it could be individual tracks. Go to chord track, and we'll say create chord events, and that will do basically the same process. So kind of, it's pretty frightening what it does. All right, so we have a question from Rob who asks, hi Greg, how do you export multiple stems that will include the effects that they were routed through? All right, so just come over, we'll jump back. So, or we'll just do it right from here. So it'll say we'll have effects.
Do you recall the day we first met? That was a long, long time ago.
All right, so when we go to our export audio mixdown, we have different processing options. So once we click on multiple, one is we can say, okay, I want to take my group channels, I want to take, my effects channels. We could render them independently. We could take our instrument tracks, and let's take our audio tracks. So one is we could render the stems independently, but when we see the effects section, this will become available once multiple is selected. At this point, once we click on the effects, we could include the inserts and channel strips. So that'd be channel EQ, the inserts, and the channel strip. We could also include the sends and the group processing, or the group processing sends and master effects processing. So if you wanted to include the send effects, choose groups and sends. If you wanted to include like a limiter or a maximizer that's on your stereo output bus, you could just include the groups directly from there. And that's how you could create stems with effects. All right, so Zephaniah asks, how can I delete reverb in the mastering project using Cubase Artist 10.5 on PC? So if the project has reverb, so let me just see if it's one of the templates. So if we start with new project, and let's see if it's the mastering template here. So there are templates. I'm not sure if it's with this. There may be some processing going on. I don't think there's any reverb on this particular file. But if it is a file that has reverb in it and you're mastering it, it's like, oh, it has too much reverb. The one thing that you could do, and I'm not sure if this, if you have Spectral Layers, does have like a de-reverber, or Wavelab has it as well. But a lot of times, if we just activate this project and say we had too much reverb on this particular guitar, we could go into Spectral Layers. And then at this point, so if it's a mix, like a stereo mix file that you have that has too much reverb, if you go to the processing, and this is an add-on for probably the actual, and this is just kind of released, but if we just, but there is kind of a reverb reduction parameter right here inside of Spectral Layers. It's often used to kind of clean up maybe like a recording that, where there's no room treatment and someone is talking and you hear the reflections. But sometimes, if the reverb is baked into the file, it could be, there's no magic solution to that. Sometimes it's, if you burned the steak to a hockey puck, at that point, it's still burnt steak. But, the best solution would probably be the Spectral Layers, if that works. So let me know if that's helpful or if I'm kind of in the ballpark with what you want to accomplish. Okay, so we see from JD Israel asks, hey Greg, in the logical editor, name contains parameter. How do I have logical editor look up multiple words at once? Okay, so let's say I wanted it to select tracks that have guitar, lead vox, and piano that contain that. So let's see if we could show how to do that. So we'll come here to the project logical editor. Let's go to setup. Okay, so we want to say, so let's say we want to select container type is track and name contains, let's say guitar. All right, and then I'm going to insert again, and we'll say name contains lead vox. All right, and we say name contains, let's say, piano. All right, so a lot of times we set this up and you click apply and nothing is selected. And this could be based upon the Boolean condition here. So we don't want it to only select tracks that are named guitar, lead vox, and piano. We want guitar or lead vox or piano. So we're going to change the Boolean condition here to or. So now when I come over here, we'll just say I have that selected, and so now it will now select, because we've changed the Boolean condition. So instead of it looking for a files or tracks named guitar and lead vox and piano, like all three of them combined, we wanted to look for guitar or lead vox or piano. And then once you have that set up, you could set up your kind of own naming criteria, but make sure that you have the Boolean condition set to or as opposed to and, because and it would have to meet all of those criteria, and with or it can meet any of these three. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Always wonderful to see Kerwin Young from Atlanta, Georgia. All right, so we see, can we assign a shortcut key command to expand and collapse selected folder track? All right, so let's say we have this set. So I think if you go to project and under track folding, that you could just toggle the selected track. So let's look for the key command for that. So I'm going to go to my edit menu to key commands, and we want to go to, it's going to be under under project. I'll just type in fold here. Okay, so I think it's just going to be under let's just look under project. Okay, so we'll see folding, toggle, selected tracks. So that's the keyboard shortcut. I may have installed this. So you could just assign on toggle folding for selected tracks. So, and again, under project, you'll see the function for toggle under folding, toggle selected tracks, and then that function would just simply take your selected track and just fold and unfold it if you wanted to. All right, so we have Club to Breathe checking in from Brazil. Thanks for joining us. All right, everyone's happy that Kerwin is on. Okay, so we have just a question from Benny from Sweden. It says, question, can you show me how to set up a reference track? Okay, so how I do it is, let me just go to a particular project that kind of has one set up, see if it's in my recent projects. Okay, I'll just open it. Okay, so the tricky part of sometimes dealing with reference tracks is rather that we may have processing on our master bus. So we don't want to necessarily take an audio file that's been processed and completely mastered and then run it through our kind of bus processing chain, because that's really not kind of a fair, because we're kind of processing the same file twice and it doesn't give us a true reference. So what we want to do is to set up kind of an alternate monitoring path. So when we are here, we'll say, okay, I want to take this particular file, and we're going to utilize the control room for this. I'm going to go to my studio menu to audio connections, and I'm going to go to my control room, and we're going to set up a add a queue. So I'm going to call this reference. Okay, so we set up a queue mix. So what I'm going to do is where this track is, I'm going to import the audio file. And again, I don't want this file to go through this channel because this channel has processing on it. So, but I want to be able to hear this and switch back and forth between the rest of the multi-track mix and our particular and the reference track. So I'm going to open the channel settings here. One of the things you could do is we'll just say, so on this particular track, I want to send its output source, and we're going to choose no bus. I'm going to go to the queue sends, and where we have our reference, we want to enable the reference here. So right now, when we play this track, I'll solo this track, and as it plays, I'm just going to EQ it differently so that we can hear the difference. So as this track plays, we don't hear it through our, it's not being, we see that it's playing back, we see the metering, but it's not being routed to here. But if we go to our control room, it's actually being routed into our control room. So now if I wanted to switch back and forth between the mix, like that I want to compare to the reference track, I will just play this, and now I could listen to mix, and we'll just unsolo. So this is everything that's in this current project. And when I go to my reference track, I can just click here. And now we're only hearing this one particular track. So as you do this, you probably wanted to make sure for levels that we're at 0 dB, 0 dB. So we're not adding or taking away any gain. So I can listen to the mix of the project that I'm working on. And now I can just toggle to my reference. And then if I export it, I don't have to worry about this particular aspect. I don't have to worry about this being exported as in the mix because it's not going to be included. And you could just, so once again, import the audio file, make sure there's no processing on it. And at that point, in the right-hand zone, click on Send. Send it to after you have created the audio connections. And you send it to, you create a Q mix here. We can think of just the Q mix as an alternate monitoring destination. You could send it here and then switch back and forth. So go to your sends, click the Q send tab, and we could just go back and forth between the reference and your mix, and you could have keyboard shortcuts to do that as well. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, always wonderful to see Michael Teams checking in from Weatherford, Texas. I believe that the virtual ice cream will begin. Okay, so we have a question from Rich. Hey, Greg, if I have an ascending chromatic chord sequence or melody, is there a way to quickly copy it and turn it into a descending sequence? Okay, so let me just create a part here quickly. Okay, so let's say all right, and just check my control room, make sure we're on the right. Okay, so I'm just going to put this into quick step entry. All right, so just put in some half notes. Okay, so let's say we have, this as kind of our chord progression. So let's say if we come here, I think if we go to MIDI, we could just choose to, if you want to reverse under functions, that you could just choose to reverse just like that. So if you wanted to copy that, we could just say Control D, and then again go to your MIDI menu to functions, and you could choose to just reverse if you wanted to. So you could also try kind of playing around with that. And there's also just kind of a mirror function. So if you go to MIDI, here we could choose under functions to mirror. So I'll just extend this out a little more. So give that a shot. Try select, duplicating, and then try the reverse function. All right, we see that Uno Memento has received 1 gallon of Dr. Pepper float ice cream. Good flavor, Michael Teen. Sorry. All right, so we see, hey Greg, Matt from Toronto is from Matt Elder. I have a question about file management. I feel like I have too many saved tracks in the pool. What is the best way to keep these organized? So if we have a pool, some of the things, and we could access the pool from the media menu or hitting Control or Command plus the letter P. So, if you have, a lot of, one of the things that you could do is actually, if you have a lot of unused files, we could just right click and you could say remove unused media, and that will be placed in the trash. Now, if you wanted to say, okay, I'm doing a lot of, I want to take all of these tracks, and we could actually just say create folder and call it vocal. I'll just call it Vox. So now I could take all of my vocal tracks here and just copy it directly into a particular folder. So if you want to have loops, so a lot of times you'll see people may have folders for different tracks just to kind of keep track of maybe all the guitar files, all of the bass, all the drum tracks could all be, and loops could all be organized into folders by right clicking. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Matt. Just rereading question. Okay, so we see Tony, just a clarification on his question from earlier, says he was more interested in trimming in the MIDI editor. I wanted to do strumming on a guitar sound. In his case, can you assign trimming to the grid? All right, so let's take a look, see if we can do that. Okay, so when we use our trim tool here, I'm just going to all right, so when we trim, so I don't think that is, so let me just find the right modifier key. Hang on. I thought it was. Oh, let me just turn my snap off here. All right, so let me see if I set my grid here to 1/8 notes. So if you hold down Alt or Option, so I don't think that is going to So when using the trim tool, I don't think that's going to be to the grid, but you could, let's say if we wanted to kind of quantize that, we could just say, okay, my quantized value is set to 16th notes, and then as you do it, we could just come over and say, okay, I want to trim that, and now I want to quantize it, these particular notes, to 16ths. We could do it like that, but the trim tool is kind of set for to be designed more freely. You could probably set up like a logical editor template to automatically do kind of strumming patterns to go to the next pitch, and then move the start position over. So if I wanted to come here, let's see if we could just do it in the logical editor quickly. Alright, so see if we do this, and I want to just remove this. So I want to take the position of the note, okay, so if I have this selected, we'll say type is equal to note, and we'll create kind of a double bracket. So you could kind of experiment with some stuff like that, where you could move the individual notes over like in 16th note based upon the pitch. So you could play around with that, but generally this is more kind of user defined, because you may want to actually just use kind of different strumming techniques like this, but you could always just come over here and just, once you have it done, quantize to 16th notes or to 32nd notes, and just kind of just set the quantized value. Then you could just kind of set your strums to automatically be musically aligned. We see Michael Teams wants people to dance on the like button. So that's all right. James Dalzell asks, how do I separate MIDI drums into separate tracks? I use Roland's Zenology plugin. When I record drums, it records them onto one track. Is there a way I can separate the drums when playing live? So you may not have to do it when you're, if you have, let's say, drum pattern here. You could have each one done live. It may be a little more complex to do it live, but you could do it through like an input transformer. But if you have, let's say, multiple drum sounds here, so let's say we have like kick, snare, hi-hat, and we wanted to separate these into their own parts. If you go to MIDI and choose dissolve part, make sure I don't have anything else selected. So MIDI to dissolve part, and then you could separate pitches. And then each pitch would be separated onto its own. If you wanted to do this live, if you wanted to set up like kick, snare, hi-hat, toms, I'll just do this on a new project. All right, so I'll just add, let's say, okay, so let's say I, wanted to just take this and I only wanted to have C1. So let's say this will be kick, snare, hat, and let's say tom 1, floor tom, and otherwise we could have more notes. But what we could do is just come over to the input transformer, and you could do this on a track basis, and we'll say, okay, I want to open the panel, and we want to choose that we're going to, so we'll activate this, and we'll say let's filter out, we'll say value 1, we want to filter out notes unequal to C1. So as soon as I come here, I could just actually hit the particular, note or hit the tom. So now this is going to filter out, this track is going to filter out every note that's not C1. I could come here, let's get to the input transformer on this particular track. So we'll say we want to, and again, we'll say we want to filter, not transform. And we'll say value 1, I want it to be unequal to D1. So, and you could just kind of do this for each drum sound. So now as you play your particular kit, once you have this set up, and you could save these as presets, if you have these loaded, each single track, and what you want to do is to just place each of the tracks in record enable, and then as you play like an electronic drum kit or any MIDI controller, this track is only going to record C1, this track is only going to record D1. It's going to filter out all the other notes, and you can do F sharp 1, G1, A1, whatever particular MIDI note assignments, and you could just have that set up and save it as a multi-track preset and call it up every time you want to record drums and split it out. Or once it's done, just go to MIDI to dissolve part, record it all into one part. So that may be faster in the long run. All right, I see that Michael Teens has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of coconut amaretto ice cream. Thank you very much. It's very generous, Michael. Okay, so we have Gerald Ely asks, hey Greg, I have a drum kit set up and separate tracks in the project going to a group track for volume control. Is it best to put compression on each single track or the group track? So often, sometimes people, can use a combination of both. So if you wanted to, let's come over to this project here. So if I wanted to take my drums, so say I'll take my drums here, I'm going to select all the tracks. All right, so if I add a group channel to all of my drum tracks, all right, and we'll call this our drum bus. All right, so now I'm at my drum bus and we go to, say, okay, let's go to the channel strip on the bus. So a lot of people would use this for doing kind of maybe more, so they would use this maybe for kind of adding flavor and cohesion to like a whole drum group. And what's kind of cool about this is there's a mix knob. So if you wanted to kind of do parallel processing, so let's say we wanted to blend the original source. And then I could kind of add the compressed source here. But if we go to the mix, we could kind of have a parallel function where we're blending in the original signal, the unprocessed, with that. So most people would kind of tend to, I think, throw a compressor on the snare track, maybe not the cymbals or hi-hat, sometimes on toms, and usually gating on toms. But not every single track. So it's pretty common, I think, to do a compressor on the snare, as well as kind of for cohesion, to take each of the drums and to process them through a compressor on a bus. But make sure that you're not kind of fighting yourself with that. And it's kind of, it's not working against you, and kind of just eradicating and getting rid of all of your dynamics that you may want to have in the project. All right, so you see Michael Pierce just pretty much commented the same thing that I just showed, and he's a smart recording engineer guy. And he has a cool British accent too, and good soup recipes. All right, so we see from Club to Breathe, save and backup project. Is there a way to save and backup files with one click, so to speak, so I don't need to keep searching for files later when I move them around? Cubase Pro 12. Okay. Okay, so let's come over and, so, once we are, I'll just reread this, make sure. Okay, so if you have files that are kind of scattered in different destinations and we wanted all these to be in one common folder, if you go to your media menu, one of the things you could do is just select to do a prepare archive, and then all the files that are used in the project get moved into the project folder, or the record file folder. And I think if we go to our project menu, we could go to the project setup, and you could see the actual project location here. So within this folder, you'll see a folder called audio. So if you don't have it set up, and there's preferences for this, so just to be aware of when you go to editing to audio, that when you import audio files, that you could have it automatically copy all files to the project folder. So as project, as audio files are introduced into the project, that they're automatically copied into the folder, and that can negate this. But you may have loops or sections from different files, and if you wanted that to all be in kind of a common location, that's when you could go to media and choose prepare archive. And we could also do this from the pool if you hit control or command plus the letter P. And at this point we could just say, okay, let's just click on prepare archive here, and that would create move all of the files to a common folder for you. So let me know if that is helpful for you from Club to Breathe. Okay, so we see Dennis from Ontario, Canada asks, is there a way to increase the volume of all tracks in a course by 2 dB? All right, so let's come over here. So let's say we'll label this part of our song, and let's just check our automation. So I'm just going to create some automation here quickly. All right, so I'm going to select all of my drum tracks here, and I'm just going to give it like a basic automation value. So I'm going to link these together. So I move one, and now we've automated, let's say, our vocals. All right, so we automated our drums. So when you go to look at our drum tracks, we'll see kind of our initial value. So let's say our course is between the left and right locators here. So let's create a project logical editor preset. All right, and we're going to choose to transform. And we want to say our media type is equal to automation. And I'm going to set up my pre-process command in automation here. Let's choose to have it show all of our volume automation. Okay, so we're going to show all volume automation to start with. Then I'm going to take the automation, and we're going to say the position is inside the cycle marker. Okay, and then what we want to do is to set in our event transform actions. We want to trim, and we want to increment volume by 2 dB. Okay. So if I've done everything right, we're going to show all of the volume automation. Then we're going to take the automation between the cycle marker, and let's say this is our chorus of the song, and now we're going to increase it by 2 dB. So let's see if I did it right. All right, make sure the cycle is turned on. All right, let me just all right, so just make sure we have read enabled. let's try might have to set this up for under property. Okay, now, oh, I'm sorry. What I want to do, sorry, I'm going to say automation, and let's say the automation name contains volume. All right, let me just look at another preset here from a factory preset. And all right, so I'll just start over again with this. All right, let me just try a try adjusting my tool here. Quick, hang on. All right, let me see what happens if I may have worked with this. Let me just did this the other day, so let me just Start from scratch one more time and see if we can get it. All right, so let's say media type is, okay, so we want to take our automation, and now let's drop it, and let's say the name contains volume. Let's see if this just moves it. Okay, so let me see if I could select my just gonna come over here to automation. Sorry if I have my brain cramp here. All right. Okay, so let's see if we can now get it to select all the volume information. Okay, so now let's see if we could switch this to transform. Now trim by 2 dB. And we'll try one other thing. If not, we'll move on, and maybe I'll come back to it at the end. just see if I could select. Okay, so come over here. All right, so we could select all the automation. Let's go to media type is, or say our position is in the cycle. I could try just one more time here. We'll select all the tracks. I'll try to circle back to it if we have time at the end. But I know you can. There is a way of doing it. I just did it the other day for someone, where you could just kind of take that particular, range of automation. But I'll just try one other quick thing before we move on. So let's say I just want to. We'll select automation. Inside of cycle. Yeah, I'll circle back to it if we have time at the end. Sorry about that. And we can show it on Tuesday's live stream. Okay. So we see Club Debris just says MIDI dissolve parts into pitch is a great feature for producing music. All right. See, Michael Pierce has a soup recipe coming. All right, wonderful to see Cubase X on. Okay, so we see from Cubase X, it just asks, says question, MIDI track with notes. I open the key editor in its own window. If I play my keyboard, I can see what notes I'm striking on the piano on the left, and that's great. But now I want to see which notes I played on the piano roll. On the left, the recording already made. When I press play, how can I see this? So I'm not sure if it's updated. Let's go take a look. Okay, so as we go to play, a particular event here. That we can see what notes are actually being played in. But as we kind of play back notes, so it's good, and I'll just solo this. So if I record, so we see the pitch indicated while we play, but I think, you know, like as you play back, it doesn't show that, but you could actually see up here, if you have the, let's go to the setup window here, or rather when you come to this little setup window here, you can see the status line, and while it's not indicated there, you could actually kind of see the pitch. I guess it's not showing the current, kind of shows you where the mouse value is, but let's say if we so, but yeah, I mean, it's, I think, you know, the intention was that like you could just, you know, see the particular note name on the note itself depending on your zoom factor. So unless it's like really small, that you could see the actual name, you know, on the note itself. So let me know if there's like, if that's not sufficient for you to see, you know, or if you want to see the pitch playback here, and if you want to see a playback there as opposed to here on playback. And you know, one of the things that a lot of people miss is that like while you're in record, that you could just click right there and use that as its own kind of MIDI controller inside of the editor. But let me know if, you know, there's a specific reason why you want, if this pitch indication on a note isn't good and you want to see it visually play back right from there instead. All right, so we see Michael Pierce's soup recipe. Says Michael Team's chilled soup, sweet celery, leek garlic plus potato stock, perhaps cayenne, simmer for 20, add sour cream, season, cool, chill, serve, dressed with tarragon. Could add cooked seafood as well. So we see just a question. When does Greg have summer vacation, or what kind of schedule will we see these Cubase live streams during the summer and fall? So I think I may be taking a week. We're kind of finalizing a quick family beach trip in August. So unlike other countries, Americans are really bad at vacation. So I may, you know, I have more vacation time than I take every year. I took a week off for vacation in April for my son's spring break. But I think we might be gone August 5th through 12th. And as we get the vacation times finalized, I'll let everyone know in advance that we won't be doing live streams while I'm on vacation. But I think that's considered that kind of penciled in. The live streams from the 5th to the 12th. We probably won't be doing a live stream that week, and then I should be around. I may be, there's talk of maybe a possible trip for me to go to Hamburg in September, and if I do that, I may have to miss a live stream or two, but other than that, I think I will be around for the regularly scheduled Tuesday and Friday meetups throughout the rest of the year. See, Michael Pierce just says Hawaii. So we went to Hawaii in April. So we'll may do kind of a smaller trip, maybe to Ocean City, Maryland, something like that. But in America, we don't take kind of, I see my German colleagues that, take most of August off. So we usually don't do that in America, unfortunately. So we're not so good on doing vacations. All right, so let's see if we have, I think we're at the end of questions. Let's see if we have some more questions come in. I know we had some questions that were mailed in. Okay. So I think this came in from Michael Pierce right before the live stream. It says, I've been, I think he basically, he's been IRing his EMT 140 in the chapel, as it may well be sold soon and has a sound like no plugin I've ever heard. I have the sweep, the recorded responses, but actually relatively few ways of dealing with them. I used to use Voxengo Deconvolver. It's been mangling those ones like anything. A direct import into Wave's IR verb works fine, but it ends up in a proprietary format, .wir, so I can't use them in Reverence. I think he wants to capture his like a Reverence an impulse through his EMT plate. So, one of the things you could do, I haven't experimented with this in a while. I know I set it up for like some post-production people is, let's say we add an effects channel track. So when we have our Reverence connected to the system here, we could audition kind of what the reverb sounds like. So let's come over here and we'll just take our output level. So we have this little kind of impulse generator just right here. So if I wanted to browse through different like plates, that we could kind of send the impulse. And often what the impulse is just a quick burst of like white noise. But I think what you could do is, if we don't load in any particular convolution, so let's say we just import, a nothing as, let's see if we go to browse, if there's like an init. All right, so let's set, I'll just take my mix down here to 0%, and we'll just have our output. So what I would try, Michael, is just using, so you hear that little like impulse spike. So click on this button here, and with that impulse spike, at that point, we could feed that signal of where this is going. So I would take, this particular effects channel track, and you could feed it out to particular outputs that you want. So if you wanted to, at this point, choose to, we'll go to, whatever outputs you want in the audio connections. And then you could basically take the output of the plate and record it as a WAV file right here. So just take this little impulse, send that into your plate, record the output of it as a WAV file, and then all you'd have to do is just import the particular WAV file here. So, take the, again, just come over here to browse. You could just, so if you wanted to listen to kind of what the reverb sounds like, you can click and just audition the different halls. So say, okay, I want to go to a small hall, and this way you could just get a sense of what the room sounds like. So try taking the mix percentage here to 0, feed that out, and record the audio out of the plate, and capture that back into Cubase, save it as a WAV file, and import it directly into the as a WAV file directly into Reverb again. We also had Peter, who had some questions on being able to select different like tracks, to select a track that had a muted event on it. So I haven't found a way to do that, and I think he wanted to take muted events and automatically, if the track had muted events, to take the track and automatically disable or hide the track. So I haven't found a solution for that. So when I use the Project Logical editor, and I'm still kind of playing around with this, see if I get it to work. So we could select the particular events that are muted, and sometimes if I select muted events with a particular preference on the track, so if we go to preferences to editing, and we say it might be under project and mix console, that basically an event selection would trigger the track selection follows the event selection. So if I have this track selected and I click on this because it's a muted event, that this track gets selected. But if I select this particular event with the Project Logical editor, that doesn't carry over. So I'm still working to see if I could figure out a way to figure that out for you, so that we could automatically have that, but I didn't find a perfect solution for it. And last time on the live stream, we showed that you could, if you had muted and non-muted events, that we could take the particular muted events and save them and put them into a track version, and that way they're hidden, and then you could navigate back and forth between the track versions. But I haven't found a way. Usually when we have the track selected, it's going to be looking for not the event that's muted, but for the track that's muted. So I'll continue to play around with it over the weekend and see if I get more of a better answer for you with that. All right, let's go back to our live questions. All right, so we see James is asking how do I access the MIDI transformer in Cubase Elements? So let me see if Cubase Elements has it. Could be that it may not have the Cubase the input transformer. So we'll come over to applications. I'll just test and check really quickly. So we'll just open it up quickly here. Give me just a second. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a MIDI input transformer, but let's see if there's the MIDI dissolve. Yeah, so there is the dissolve part that you could use here to split and separate by pitches in Cubase Elements. So sorry about that. No input transformer there. So you can see where that could be more of a pro feature. All right, so we see from Uno Mementos has been hanging out with Cubase since 1989, but now in the last 3 years, I've learned more than in all of the previous years combined. Of course, the program has developed enormously. Thanks, Greg. So it's a pretty amazing achievement what's gone on since I'm a newbie compared to you, starting in '91. So, but yeah, it's pretty amazing to see sort of version 2 for Atari. All right, so we see from X Cubase X as follow up in the playback, no visual and MIDI editor, seeing the notes in the piano roll would seriously speed up my workflow. I really want this as a user request, please. I often just jam piano parts. I want to visually see what I played really fast and not look at G sharp that were A flats in many of the chords in the entire song. So one of the things that you could do if you notice that you have kind of enharmonic issues where you want to so let's say in this case I want to see B flats instead of A sharp 2s. If we go to, once you have this set up once, and I realize this kind of could be annoying, but if we go to, let's say, our chords, and let's say that we're in the key of F. Okay, so if we have the preference set, so once we have kind of the chord set, you'll see under chords, under event display, you'll see chords and pitches. You can say enharmonics from chord track. So if this sees that we're in the key of F, now when we go to the particular event here, we'll see that the A sharps are automatically aligned with the key of the chord track. So we'll see B flat instead of A sharps. So you could switch it, but I understand the desire to want to see it kind of play back. But let me but I think that this is going to be more of an indication for the on the input side. I think if we do the keyboard, it's going to be kind of the same situation. This won't reflect kind of the playback. That's going to be on input only. But I'll pass it along as a feature request. So. Okay, so we see Brian Sawyer on. Says howdy all. He's late. What did he miss? So we gave away all sorts of wonderful stuff. So it was a Neve console that Michael Pierce won. So for his soup recipe. See, Michael Teens is also a fan of going to Hawaii, and he's been there many times, and he's ready to go again. So, yeah, I don't think you can get burned out on going to Hawaii, so it's worth it. Okay, so we have a question. All right, so we see, hello, so we see from Vlad, hello, please tell me how to record one or more MIDI or audio tracks in real time to an additional track. Okay, so we'll set up a new project for this. We'll come over here to create empty. Okay, so let's say I'll add a retro log. All right, and let me set up a pad shop. So we'll just come over here, add another instrument track. Okay, so let's say we have these sounds layered together here. And we'll add one more instrument. All right, so we'll layer all these different sounds together. Okay, so if I wanted to record this to audio, I'm going to select these 3 instrument tracks. Let's route it to a group channel to select it. So we'll call this our synth pad group. Okay, so now all these are, when I select all of these particular tracks here, they're all being sent to this group. I want to now create an audio track. And for its input, we want this synth pad group. So we'll now enable record in all these tracks. So if I want to record MIDI from these 3 instruments and record the audio to this track in real time, I'll just come over here. So now we recorded both the MIDI and the audio is now captured all of that together. So as we play this and we just kind of solo this particular track, we will hear kind of the sum of all the synth pads. So you could route all these to a group, and at that point just take that audio input, add the audio track, and set the group as its input. Okay. All right, so we have a question from Soren. Can anybody tell me, and maybe you, Greg, is there a place to see a chart over the EQ frequency zones, low mids, high mids? I need to get a grip of it. So, one of the things that you could do if you want to get a sense of what's going on, is like using one of the EQ plugins or using a multiband. So let's say we want to, I'll just take project. We'll play this back. Okay, so let's say I'm on my master bus here. So let's say I'm playing back. All right, so let's say as we're playing here, we could think of this roughly as like, okay, here's my high frequencies, high mids, low mids, and lows. And you can see kind of the frequency breakdown here. So this is 20 to 150, and we can see 150 to, looks like 2K or 1.5K. Yeah, so 150 to 1.5 in our low mids. And then this is going from 1.5 to 10K and above 10K. And sometimes you could also visualize this a bit on like frequency. Yeah, or let's say just your, so let's come to like your frequency EQ. And then once you kind of turn on, let's say we'll adjust our gain here in this. There is this function where as you're adjusting the EQ, you get a sense of exactly what you're hearing. Trying to see if there's a so like as you just adjusting, you can get an idea just the frequencies as you come over, and this is a really good way to kind of get a sense of like make that correlation between what you're listening to and the frequency range, so you could see the frequency and just hear isolated just by enabling the auto listen for effects. But check out the Imager plugin, is a good sense of like low mid, high mids, and highs, kind of broken down, and this gives you the ability to solo each of the bands without even making any changes to it, to get a sense of where your different frequency ranges are falling. So let me know if that's helpful. See, Michael Teams says Revelation Today is the group track as a source. All right, wonderful to see Nick on. He's busy building wardrobes at the moment, but just popped on to hit the like button. All right, so we see from Cubase X says follow up on the note visual in the MIDI editor. Yeah, I just really want to see the notes that I played. Thanks so much for the tips with the chord track, but means I have to generate one, etc., etc. So, but I think it's visually you can get a pretty good idea of what is going on. I've never whenever I've done MIDI stuff and I look at it in the editor, I don't, to me it's just a visual representation. I often like even if you open up a Bach piece, you will see kind of the harmonic contours and how the different parts are going to be shaped, the melodic contours, and kind of see the shape. So I've never had a problem with it, but I'll include it in my notes to pass along. let me just say if I'm just coming here. And if you look here, you could actually kind of see the current chord, if that's helpful. So we just went to, so as we're changing chord here. But I'll pass that along. All right, we'll see if there's any other questions. All right, so we have some more. Let's see, John Costigan is passing on carpentry advice to Nick. Says even though his thumb technically has a nail, don't strike it with the mallet. So, yeah, when I worked construction, I was in high school. You know, I was really good and never hit my finger with my hammer after striking it 10,000 times a day until my friend's dad asked me if I hit my thumb. Then the next day I hit my thumb. So. Okay, so we see from Benny, what strings are on Sana Wedding? So let's see what strings I used on it. So there can be just 1990s synth strings. So just another great string sound that comes with Howling Sonic. I think it's a stock sound. It comes with Cubase. So lots of great sounds to explore. If you haven't taken the time just to go through all the sounds that are available inside of Howling Sonic, it's definitely worth doing. All right, so we see Michael Teams is teasing us that he got a new toy yesterday. So. All right, see if there's any other questions that kind of sneak in. I may try to tackle that automation. See, Michael Pierce says he's potentially losing his EMT 140 on Monday, but gaining a Wurlitzer. So, doesn't seem like a good trade. I don't know. But I remember being at the guitar maker, Paul Reed Smith. I remember being at his house helping him with his Cubase. And he actually, I think he had the plate reverb from Sun Records and also the plate reverb from the studio in upstate New York where Bob Dylan did kind of all his classic records. So he had his two plate reverbs, and he called them Bob and Elvis. That was his prized possessions. So he also had some nice guitars at his house. And all right, so let's see if there's any more questions. I may take another quick stab at that automation questions. Kind of nagging at me. I'll see if I could. Let's do maybe a new project. We'll see if more questions kind of come in. just select a couple of. Okay, so I'm going to add some automation here. Okay. And let's set the cycle range. All right, so we have Tiago joining us from Brazil. Thank you for sharing the project. Hang on, just okay, so let's see if we could figure this out again quickly. I'll take another stab at it for a couple minutes until we get another question or two. I know I did it just recently. Okay, so let's say we want to now we'll just take this automation and now it's doing it just perfectly fine. All right. So now what we did is we've taken automation in the cycle. So let's say we have different automation points here. And I only want to take it within the cycle range, let's say the course. And I want to, let's see if this works again. All right, so let me see if we close the automation, I'll undo those changes. So we want to show all of the automation. And now it's only adjusting the automation values for that particular range. So I'm not sure why it didn't work before, but we want to choose transform. We could open, show all volume automation, media type is equal to automation, position inside the cycle. And at that point, we want to increment by 2 dB. So that way we could say in the chorus, let's raise all the automation up. And so I'm going to do the values inside of the particular cycle range. Okay, so you see Michael Teams, his new toy is a Lefty Burgundy Mist Gretsch Electromagnetic. Sounds great. Thanks for sharing. You'll have to, we look forward to seeing it on the next Zoom meetup. All right, wonderful to see Daniela Tokan from Germany on. Thanks for joining us. And we have Mirko Kondik saying hello. Thanks for joining us. All right, Mirko is from Tuscany in Italy. Such a beautiful part of the world. All right, we'll see if there's more questions coming in. Right, it's a Friday in the summertime, so people are probably out doing vacation stuff. See, Daniela just says someone did set up Cubase on a virtual machine. So remember, if that's for kind of using Cubase kind of remotely, like, on a machine that's hosted somewhere, that's somewhere else, sometimes latency could be an issue. I know one time I was talking with the composer Tom Holkenberg, or Junkie XL, as he's known, kind of a noted film composer. And for his assistants, he kind of, it's a pretty sizable investment in, equipping studios and gear, and that he was looking into kind of remote access for systems that could be parked at his studio, and his assistants could be kind of accessing the machines remotely, but there's still, like, latency was a little higher than he wanted. So, but it's always interesting where, people may just have kind of like cloud versions of DAWs in the future that they could access. All right, we'll see if there's more questions that sneak in. If not, we'll wrap up early. Everyone can get an early start to their weekend. I'll give it another minute or so. See, Daniela says latency should not be a problem. I come for 10 milliseconds in a test. That'd be fine. All right, so we have a question from Indrop. Hi, Greg. Hope you're doing well. Could you explain fades and auto fades? Okay, so when we have a particular, let me just jump to a file where we have some test tones on it. Okay, so when we want to do, like, fading of different events, there's kind of two ways of doing a fade. So one is to, we could just come over here and on the event itself do fade ins and fade outs. So we could grab the upper handle, and that would allow us to do fade in and a fade out. Now, if we have this event, let's say that's duplicated, so let's take this event and Control or Command D, and I want to have a seamless transition into this event. What we could do is I'm just going to take my snap off by hitting letter J, and we could have kind of a slight overlap. So if we have a slight overlap, or they're just kind of right next to each other, we may want to have this track kind of fade out as this track fades in. So I could select both. I think I need to select both events and hit the letter X, like a crossfade, and that could automatically do like crossfades. And if the two events are overlapping, it would now just crossfade by hitting the letter X right, on the particular event. So this way, that event is going to kind of fade out while one is fading in. So now we could also, through a sample process, if we come over here to audio and go to processes, at this point we could choose to do a fade out on this particular event. So that could do a linear or logarithmic fade, and that would write that particular fade in a file. We don't necessarily see it here, so we could think of this as being more non-destructive. So if I wanted to come here, and if I wanted to, right click into fade area or double click into fade area, at this point we could even make custom fades. So if that's what you want to do, that could be, and you could save that as a default fade. So we could have fades kind of on playback just by adjusting here, or they could be permanently written in. Now, at times you may just want to have, if we did an edit, we may, and if we're doing this like 100 times in a particular file, so let's say if we have maybe just like, we'll listen to just like a test tone here. And why you may need to do a particular fade is, let's say if we do a cut on this test tone, you may hear a little like pop or click. And let me just, so let's say if we were editing, and this will be kind of an extreme example, so let's say we had to edit these two together. So you may hear like a little click there between the transition, between the events. So at that point, you could do kind of a crossfade between the two. So that would, so we come over here, I'm just going to select both of the events and hit the X key, and that would do just a very small crossfade to minimize the pops or clicks. But sometimes, like when we're starting a particular file, we may want to have it just automatically get to the point where we may want to have it play a short fade at every time. And this is when we could get into auto fades. So if we click right here on the event, we could open up the fade settings. So now if we wanted to play like this event, and let's say we start, like, let's say we're right here on our event, and I start playing, we may hear just like a little click or pop when we're playing. So just at the very start, depending on where the audio file is starting. So say we're not at the 0 axis. So when you play, you'll hear a little click or pop at the very beginning. And sometimes that could be masked. So if I wanted to apply a short fade in or short fade out at the end of event, or as two events are overlapping, this is when we could use the auto fade setting. So if we say, let's do an auto fade in and fade out, and we could choose our various fade shapes, our various crossfade shapes. So now when I start in the middle of a particular, not at a 0 crossing point, like here or here or here, the program will do a very short fade in and fade out. So many times people will do editing of fades because they hear the particular fade. They may hear the edit, the transition, if the edit wasn't done at the 0 crossing point. So people may spend a lot of time doing short little fade ins and fade outs. And the auto fade can just simply do the particular fade without actually writing the particular fade into the file. So it will just take this file and do a short 10 millisecond fade in and fade out when it stops playing, or when it starts playing, or when two clips are overlapping. Now the disadvantage with this is sometimes people are like, oh, I want to see the fade. You don't see the fade, it's just on playback only. And when you see the fade is when you actually initiate the fade, either by dragging the clip handle like that. So the auto fades will just play, and it's a good fast way if you've done 400 edits on a vocal, where you don't have to worry about every transition, about there being like a little pop or click when the vocal plays back. The auto fades will just kind of automatically fix that for you for the most part. Okay. Okay, so let's see, we have another question. It says, question, how to select only top notes in the long MIDI part, or two upper notes with logical editor. I have MIDI and want to transform full MIDI ID for full MIDI to some parts. Thanks. Okay. So let's say if I'm looking at this particular part, so if I wanted to, take, let's say, like notes higher than, let's say, C4 and higher, and extract them to a different part, or do something like that, we can just, so it's not necessarily where you can say, if it's a chord, we could say the highest note within a chord. So we'll show you both of these. So let's go to MIDI, to Logical Editor, and we'll go to Setup. So we can say I want to, and we'll just show selection here. So let's select type is equal to note, or we could just come over here and say context variable, it equals highest pitch. So we could select the highest pitch in the event. We could also say I want to select the highest in chord. So if there's a number of chord notes, so let's come over here, see if this may be contingent on a chord track. So let's say the note number in a chord. So let's say I want to do 3. So we could select the higher notes within a chord. But we could also say I want to select notes that have a pitch bigger or equal than C4. So I can now just come over and say any note that's higher than C4 or higher, select those particular notes. So let me know if that's helpful for what you want to do. So sometimes we could define within a chord, but if you say the highest 2 notes, that could vary. Or you could say notes higher than this or lower than that with the logical editor pretty easily. Okay. All right. So Soren says, he says, Greg, one thing bugs me when I look at Download Manager, have it open a while, but the Update tab arrives after I install updates from there. The next time it tells me the same update still exists. All right. So let me just take a look. I'll open up the Download Assistant. Okay, so all right, so say I go to my Cubase Pro 12 license here. All right, so this is when I look at Download Manager, have it open a while, the Update tab arrives, and if I install the updates from there, next time it tells me some same updates still exist. So I always go for it when I'm in the Steinberg Download Assistant. I'm not sure if you're referring to the hub or not, but when I come to the Download Assistant here, we could see, like what components are installed and which are not. So I could see that like we had the 12.07 came out like a week or two ago. And at this point, when it says install again, like I can see install again, that these are already installed. So I can see that 12.07 is installed. So if I see install, maybe I didn't download the Hallian Sonic from here. I installed it from a different source. But if I've installed it directly from the Steinberg download assistant at this point, it'll indicate that I could install again. And I'll just pause that for now. So let me know if that's what you're referring to, or if it's the hub that you see the notification, so close this out, sorry. So, or if you're seeing the hub here, where you can see the 12.07, so this is more of a general news feed as opposed to as opposed to the the download assistant, which would show you exactly what components you have installed and which you do not have installed. Okay, so you see Daniela talking about kind of running Cubase remotely. We did a Brocade 40 gigabyte fiber router switch with all the licenses to get silent, minus 30 dB when it runs here local, and search a fiber provider with synchron upload, which is the most heavy part in Germany. All right. All right, so we see Michael Teams is working on a new idea with the working title of Midnight Blue. All right, so you see just a clarification on the selection question. It says, I have only the chords with the melody in one MIDI. How can I easily select and transform only the melody? And from accompaniment, I want to select also the bass notes. All right, so I'll just do this like a quick solo piano type project here. Or let me just, or it may have kind of melody. Let me just open up a particular project. All right, so let's say I have something like this, where we say, all right, so let's say we want to extract like the lowest note within a chord. Okay, so let's extract to track, and we're going to say, start with MIDI note. All right, so now when we look at this, this is just taking the piano. So it's a So this way we could extract just the bass and put it onto its own track. Now you could also choose, like, if you depending upon the musical context, I've seen some algorithms that do this, but it could be really tricky if the voicings are kind of going in between. But you could also say, okay, anytime that there is a particular note, like you could kind of look at the length of the notes and say, okay, any note that's longer, like length of bigger or equal to, let's say, 2 beats, that we could extract to like different tracks. So this way we could sometimes just take notes. So we could sometimes separate depending upon the part, but sometimes it's hard to determine musically if you're what is a melody and what is a chord, if you're if the melody is the same length. So one of those things you might have to do manually. It's hard to kind of set up a criteria to be musically accurate in every situation. Okay. Okay, just reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, so I thought I saw a question from Soren, but it looks like he retracted it. But if it was, let me just open it up again. I think it was about in the updates. I'll just open it again, and I think I remember what I read real quickly. So I thought he said it was maybe above here with updates. So, but anyways, if you need to ask a question again, Soren, just let me know. Okay. Okay, so you see question, how can I get those faded colors which are in templates? Because new version colors are fast. So once let's say if we start with a particular template, so we'll do a new project. So we'll just say we're going to go to scoring, and I want this as my template, and you like the particular colors. In the template. So let's see what. So if you liked these particular colors, the colors are actually kind of transferred over with particular projects. But once you go to the project color setup and you have these, all you would have to do is, we could just go to your color set here. So you could have different colors, and then I think you have the option to reset, to save color set as default. And then at that point you could just, save that as your default. So once you have kind of a color scheme, then it can be saved as default. Okay, so you see Soren's question. The update tab just above where you click new Halloween Symphonic Orchestra gets installed but sticks there anyway. So let me just, maybe it's not showing up in my updates tab, Soren, sorry. Closed it prematurely. Okay, so Soren is just mentioning, it says the update tab just above where you clicked. Now Halloween Symphonic Orchestra gets installed but sticks there anyway. Okay, so let's say updates. Okay, so let's say let's see if I install this. So it looks like maybe that these are just we'll install it and then check to see if it disappears from the list here. So I may have just kind of manually updated most of these. But after installing from here, we'll see if the Cubase LE AI Elements 1207 is still there. Let it install the patch. Let it go through the process here. All right, we'll see if this can be installed. We'll give it just a little more time. Okay, so let's say we'll come over here. So even here, it's just going to allow me to show that I have the update installed and that I could install it again. So you can see that these haven't been installed, but I could just install the latest version directly from there. All right, so you see question, hello, I use my headphone and M audio sound card. I didn't figure out the cue and control room issue. It didn't work for me. So generally, I'm not sure if you have headphones that are going into the particular audio interface, but it would, you can't necessarily take like a 2-in, 2-out interface and then have a like a Bluetooth headphone or separate headphones that's connected to a different device. So you would need to have, if you wanted to use Q mixes, you would need to have an audio interface that has 4 outputs. So you have like probably 2 outputs for your monitoring of your source, and a separate 2 outputs that you're feeding into headphones or outputs into a headphone amplifier or many audio interfaces. You could take the headphones and say, okay, I want outputs 1 and 2 to go out to speakers. I want outputs 3 and 4 connected to my headphones. So generally you don't run 2 different audio interfaces because they're not properly synchronized together. So, and then all the audio that you're recording or listening to is out of sync, which is kind of a bad thing in an audio program. So if you're running the headphones into like a separate output of your M audio, you shouldn't have any problems. But if you just have headphones connected to your onboard audio interface, and the headphones connected to a different source, that's not going to work. So we see, Greg, what is your personally future request for Cubase 13? When it comes out, I'll tell you. So, but generally, let me clear my throat. Generally, I think they've done a really good job the last few versions. Like probably the most useful one for me in that I'm using like when I'm preparing for a gig or learning songs is the audio to chords that was in Cubase 12. I thought that was really fabulous and useful. But when Cubase 13 comes out, I'll probably answer it then and have a better answer. So. See, Uno Momento is going to have a friendly football match tomorrow. Sounds like fun. Okay, so Michael Teams just says a SpaceX launch is going on now. Just love watching all the fun launches. My dad was in aerospace program when I was a kid. All right, so we see a question from Ace Amadeus. So we did answer your question early on, so I think it was the very first question. If you want to jump back. So we did get, I think it was the very first question of the particular live stream today, so you could refer to that, Ace. See, Uno Momento went to Cape Canaveral in the 90s. So. All right, let's see if there's more questions that kind of sneak in. I think we got all the rest. And I just see from Hargoon Cower says, answer my questions. I'm not sure if that was with the colors or if there was another question earlier. So if there's another question earlier, just let me know if I missed it. Sorry if I did. All right. So wonderful to see the famed engineer Jean-Marie Horvat on the live stream. So glad you can make it today. We'll see if there's, I think we're near the end of questions. Hope you're doing well, Jean-Marie. Let us know if you have any questions, Jean-Marie, since you just got on the live stream. Jean-Marie asked how much does a hen weigh? So. So we see a question from Michael Graybill. Hi, Greg. Any tricks for the notepad to be visible anywhere else other than the main project window? Can't reference notes from a full screen MIDI editor window. Usually notes about sample instrument. So let's go take a look. So I know. So let's say I'm in my MIDI editor here. Let me just close this out. We'll go full screen. So just seeing if there's all right, so I mean, you could have the global. If you go to the project, you could just see the, the global notepad. And let me just, directly within. So there's a project notepad, and you could have, all your notes, here, and this could be visible, not on the main screen. So if you have, your notepad here, you could, just come right over to project and say, let's get to, again, the project notepad, and just open it up like that. And you could see your notes. I guess that you could also, if you're in a full screen key editor, and we have a marker track. So let's activate this project here. So let's add a marker track. So when we're here, we could just add a particular marker at a point and say, this is, I'm using Iconic Celli preset mod for dynamics. So let's say I have that, and when I'm in the particular editor, let's say if we're in kind of full screen editor, we could go to our global tracks and see the marker indicated here and see kind of these particular, and I'll go ahead and just colorize this. Let me just, but you could see kind of notes in the marker if you have those. So that may be another method, but again, the project notepad can be accessed and visible directly inside of the key editor as well. So let me know if that's helpful at all. All right, wonderful to see Lawrence Koch checking in from Rhode Island. All right, so we have a question. What are the new features and improvements introduced in Cubase 14 compared to Cubase 13? Will it include AI to get any sound for EDM? So I think, I'm not sure if we'll see, like, as we mentioned before, so the current version is Cubase 12, not 13. So Cubase 14 is going to be coming after Cubase 13, but 13 isn't out yet. So I'm not sure if it's going to say, give me a 303 bass and make the filter grind like this. I think it would still be a bit more of a manual process, and I think that if as people will use AI tools, it will soon realize that every one song is maybe not so intelligent. It may be artificial, but maybe not artificially intelligent, where everyone may have kind of the same results over time. But we'll have to see. But I think there's a lot of great stuff for AI functionality that we're seeing introduced in Spectral Layers 10 with the new algorithms and being able to take a particular track and be able to write the lyrics out for you automatically, as we showed last week. So. Okay. See, Uno Momento has to go rest up for his football match tomorrow. All right, you see some more. All right, so we see Gassian just says, I would like to see a feature to change wave files. So how do you want wave files to be changed? So you could do a lot of stuff currently. All right, so we see about from Michael Graybill says, thanks, we'll experiment with the global notepad. Already have a bunch of project notes up there, maybe C13 feature request to include notepad in left panel of the editor. So I'll just check just to make sure it's not in there. Currently, I don't think so. But yeah. So we'll see, but I can see where that can make sense for, and I know a lot of people I know a lot of people use a notepad on the main project window to have articulations, indicated here with the notepad, but I can see where it can make sense on having access to it in a project, in the editor windows as well. So. Right, so see, I think we're. Yeah, and one other thing for Michael Graybill about the notepad, if you have a lot of notes that are already in the tracks, if you choose to export, so if you go to File to Export, and you could say Notepad Data, so you could create kind of so we can see that we could have the individual track notes available here. So you could copy all of your track notes and paste that into your notepad. So let's say if we go back to here, we'll open up our project notepad. And let's say, okay, I want to get rid of all that, and I want to have my project notepad with my track notes here. So once again, just go to File to Export, and then you could have a separate text file, and then you could copy that text file into your global notepad, and then all of your track notes can be indicated and included right there. All right, so Benny just asks, hardly dared to think about what the course would cost if this was a paid course. Thanks, Steinberg and Greg. So you could think of the payment for the course as just being a happy Steinberg customer. So. that's payment enough. So I think it's a great service that Steinberg offers. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters on the live stream. And she was like number 81. Again, if you've learned a new tip or trick, make sure that you do hit the like button. And we see Michael Graybill says, ooh, forgotten about the export feature. Yep, I could figure out something for notes. All right. See, Daniela just says, the jazz dude just says, with AI, she's not personally that interested. I did drop Isotope RX. Results got from me not natural. So yeah, I think unfortunately AI is just kind of turned into a collective terminology for anything with that's doing kind of that's doing any kind of learning. So let's see. Michael Graybill says about payment his payment will be to buy Spectral Layers 10. He's feeling generous, so that's great. That's why we offer these live streams, so that everyone could learn how to use their Cubase better and make better music and have fun and be creative. Steinberg takes that creativity first moniker seriously. All right, wonderful to see Patrick Emanuel A on. He's happy to be on live. So we're just about, I think we're kind of at the end of questions, Patrick. So if you have any questions, please feel free. I know you usually come prepared with some questions. If you have them, feel free to ask them before we wrap up. And once again, if you've learned a new tip or trick or thought of a different way to approach a situation that you've encountered, make sure you subscribe to the channel and that you hit the like button. Great quote from Jazz Dude, AI equals a human who added something from the outside world into the digital realm. So all right, we'll see if more questions sneak in. My son has been very quietly sitting in the back waiting for me to finish, probably. Always wonderful to see Lucy Godfrey on from outside London, I believe. Thanks for joining us today. All right, we'll give it our minute or two and see if there's any more questions that come in. If not, we'll wrap up a little early. Everyone can get an earlier start to their weekend. All right. Hey, Ryan, Benny from Sweden says hello, just so you know, from the live stream. Thank you for the kind words, Benny, to my son. All right. All right, so Christian Rapp asks, is there at least one free version of Cubase, LE or something else? So we have LE, we have Cubase LE and Cubase AI, and those particular, and those come bundled with different hardware solutions. So Cubase AI generally comes bundled with Yamaha and Steinberg hardware, and LE comes bundled with third-party interfaces. So or third-party hardware, not necessarily interfaces, but you could just simply, at that point, once you have one of those interfaces, then you don't have to purchase the program separately. So technically, there isn't necessarily, how to, there isn't a like free download necessarily. So. All right, so we have a question from Lawrence. Greg, did you show last week how to export lyrics from a song into the score editor? So let's take a look at doing it into the score editor. Okay, so this is the project we used. Let me activate it. I'll just revert it because I probably destroyed it. All right, so if you haven't seen this, for those wanting AI functionality, it's a pretty good practical use case of it. All right, so we're going to listen to
Love with you, just like a long, long time ago.
So we have our vocal file here.
Oh, I remember the day that we wed.
So I'm going to take this particular file and we'll select it. I'm going to select the track. We'll go to Spectral Layers. Okay, so, and I'm going to go to Unmix to Transcription. So let's come over here. We'll do it to English. All right, so again, what this is going to do is take the vocal file and it's going to transcribe it into lyrics. Okay, so now when we kind of look in our spectral layers, we zoom in here. So let's say we'll play.
That was a long, long time ago. It was 7th grade in the school parking lot, waiting on our yellow coach to ferry us home.
All right, so I want to edit the transcription bar, right click on it, and let's go ahead and export it as a text. So put it to our desktop. Okay, and make sure okay, so it's going to be on our desktop. So I'm going to we'll take this out of, and let's go to very audio for this. All right, and from very audio, let's come over here and extract MIDI, and we'll put it on to a new MIDI track. And I won't spend a lot of time cleaning this up, but so say I just want this to be all right. So now I'm going to go to, let's come over to open our lyrics. Let me just export it. I export it as an SRT file. I'm just going to do it as text. Sorry about that. Export is wrong. Okay, so I'll just do the transcription one more time, and I'll export it as the right file format. I'll export as a text file this time instead of SRT. Get script file. Sorry for exporting as a wrong file format. Almost done, about 70% done. Okay, so it's export again as text. Open it. All right, so now I'm going to copy this, and let's go back to our score editor. Okay, so now I think if we go to our score menu, we can there's like a paste lyrics. Okay, so let's come over here. And let me just adjust the clef. All right, so we have this. So let me just go to our symbols, go to other, and do lyrics. All right, so let's go to score, to functions, and then all right, let me just make sure I have these copied. And then I think we could do just so as we do this, we could just kind of take and that's just pasting the lyrics, but it is kind of possible to just kind of take it. But it just going to functions. But there is, and even in Darko, you could just kind of hit the tab key and kind of go back and forth. But you can copy the lyrics text straight in. So, and I think that there might be a way to navigate, but I could do some more reading up on it. All right. All right, go back to other questions. Thanks for, again, all the questions. My son is desperately trying to get my attention. All right. Okay, finding my spot. So Patrick of Vanderbilt A just says, Greg suggests us some mixing and music producers so we could learn something new. You know, I would just listen to, like, you know, I mean, I just had lunch a couple weeks ago with my friend Frank Phil Petty, and he's always inspiring to listen to. I think you could learn a lot just kind of listening to, you know, particular records. You know, try something completely out of your genre. I don't know. I don't follow necessarily like a lot of producers are doing YouTube stuff. I'm sure there's a lot of great stuff, but I tend to, you know, listen, you know, maybe listen to some music that you haven't been exposed to. But, you know, and listen to some, you know, but, you know, Frank Phil Petty kind of comes to mind as someone who's like incredibly wise and does incredible work. You know, Jean-Marie Horvat is an amazing engineer. He's on the live stream, so you might be able to ask him a question directly as well. Randy Lee is trying to get some Dr. Pepper ice cream from Michael Teams. So we see Yazin just says, I would love to see BPM beat sync with high quality wave files, like in Omni Player, radio automation software ideas for the wish list. You know, so as long as you have, you know, the BPM, if that's in the metadata of the file, you can just put it into musical mode and it will automatically synchronize. Now, where it gets to be problematic is if there is fluctuating BPMs. Not a lot of metadata systems handle that correctly, but that capability is already in Cubase. So as long as the BPM is kind of standard metadata, if that's embedded into the audio file, Cubase can automatically read that right now. So. Okay. All right, see if there's, we see from Jean-Marie Horvat just says pure mix, sorry, so maybe that's a great resource for learning that Patrick was inquiring about. All right, let's see if there's more questions that sneak in. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up, but we'll take a look, see if there's any more. We know people are coming in late. All right, we'll give it our 10-15 seconds. There's usually a 15 to 20 second delay from when I talk to when everyone else hears it. So we'll just wait another couple more seconds, and if not, we'll wrap up. Okay, with that, I guess we will go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much for all the great questions from everyone. We hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick, and we will see everyone back on Tuesday at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time for our live stream, and next week we'll be doing our regular Tuesday and Friday. So everyone have a wonderful weekend. Thanks for spending part of your morning, evening, afternoon on the live stream. Hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. I appreciate everyone's wonderful questions, and we'll see everyone on Tuesday, and everyone have a wonderful, safe, and healthy weekend. Goodbye.